Blooper.
I'm always wrong. You're always right. I forgot.
It's not about who's right and who's wrong. It's about what's right.
It's about just me being wrong.
No, it's about what's right and what's wrong. Hey.
We're back and keto friendly.
We're recording?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I thought we were going to start a minute ago.
Oh, we're mad camera friendly, B. Not even keto friendly. We should be on, yeah.
Welcome to our channel.
Hey.
Hi. This is an MBTI channel for various topics of discussion between an ENFJ and
INTP.
We think that we are decently compatible, but have varying opinions about different things based on our personality types, and so it is our intention to talk about them. We both work for the government at different levels, and are otherwise regular adults, but I think
some of us have cool tattoos, some of us don't.
Some of us have cool tattoos.
Any joke. Any is for like the developed MBTI.
Oh, I thought you meant any, A-N-Y. Any
I think,
joke.
Well, for the casual person, they probably would interpret it that way, but for the...
it's hard to
Anyway, INTP, ENFJ, we're discussing relationships here.
Yeah, and things that we value versus things that we don't value.
Dislike, yeah, so...
Where they're the same or where they're different.
Yeah, I'm going to let her start it off. Relationships is more her forte than mine. So I'm going to let her be the anchor on this boat.
Graciously, I appreciate that. I would say that I agree that for me, relationships are extremely important. And I use that word kind of broadly to define my connections with any people. So generally speaking, I like to be connected to other people. I like to be social. Technically, I'm an extrovert. I still kind of think I ride the line between extrovert and introvert, in the sense that I definitely am drained by being around a lot of people for a long period of time. So it varies my ability to, stay around people for a long time. But I would say that when it comes to relationships, like intimate relationships, those are people that usually I can sustain, being around them for a long period of time, whether we're being social with other people or we're simply being with each other. Being with that person is the same as me being by myself. That's probably the extent of introverted qualities that I have. Otherwise, I'd say that I value a deep connection with somebody, intellectual conversation. Communication is huge in the sense that I don't do well with not knowing the state of things or being confused or, things being ambiguous. I'd rather somebody be upfront, even if it's something that I might not like. It's way better to just know than to not know. And then, it was just standard. I like somebody who has a good sense of humor and is otherwise just fun to be around. I'd say those are the most important things to me. What about you?
Okay. I guess for relationships in general, I'm introverted like 105%. My goal there was to make her laugh because she said she liked people with good sense of humor. Again, like number
it
7.
Works.
Anyway, my goal is just to be around people that, number one, understand me. My thoughts are quirky. Sometimes I can be all over the place. I have like very weird niche. We were talking the other day about, is it niche or niche? Niche.
I think they're both right.
Yeah, I like niche. I like niche better because it sounds like more, makes me sound more fancy. So I like people who understand my niche interest and my weird nuances and my personality. So that's a big thing with relationships. To where like friendships in general, to where I can be around people, is people who are good people, understand me, because I know it sounds like such a normal thing, but to be an INTP, you're misunderstood by like a bulk of the population, bulk of society. I think in intimate relationships, again, my big thing is to be understood. Another thing is like she said, I think that might just be a general relationship thing. Is someone who's funny, someone is a pleasure to be around, someone who can spark my NE, extroverted intuition, get me being silly, get me being myself. But there's not that many people. I guess we're talking about relationships. There's not that many people that I'm that way around. Like I could probably count them, like maybe like on one hand.
See, and that's actually interesting because I think that on this, I'm outgoing with many people, but there aren't many people that I can be alone with for a long period of time and not get like eventually wanting to be by myself. And so I feel like I typically realize that is when I found somebody that I genuinely care about and like and can, am willing to put effort into, when I realize like that this is as good as being alone.
Yeah.
Which is one of my favorite things. So, what would you say are qualities that are like automatically like, this would never work out in a relationship that somebody might have?
I'm gonna go back
or what types?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm gonna go back to the whole understanding thing. And honestly, I really hate, and we constantly talk about Myers-Briggs bigotry.
I am one.
Or simply prejudging people based on Myers-Briggs, but a lot of the S types find it.
Sorry, guys.
It's very difficult, number one, for S types. And I hate using blanketed statements. But S types, it is difficult, just speaking completely off of my life experience, for S types to understand N types in general. Now, for INTPs, who are very, as I mentioned earlier, nuanced and have these weird niche, pinky up, these weird niche interests, it's very difficult for S types to understand us. So I do want to say my biggest difficulty or barrier is when someone doesn't understand, especially like something I'm researching or something I'm thinking about. Like I'm telling you about my thoughts to try to get you to know me all the way. And, you can't quite grasp it or you can't quite understand it.
I think that one thing that can't be understated is the fact that when you don't have somebody, that I think probably the easiest way to say it is that it's an N versus an S. When you don't have somebody who can understand N thoughts, it feels like you really can't get close to that person. Like there's a certain point where you can't. It's almost like your relationship remains superficial. And I'd say this was like I experienced this like before I even realized anything. I didn't knew anything about Myers-Briggs. So like since then, I don't know if I could describe it as well, but it was like trying to date somebody who I would perceive as being an S was unfulfilling. Because at a certain point, it felt like most of the thoughts that I have, I couldn't share with them. And then, I mean, for me, being a social person, like those are usually things that I do like to discuss outwardly and, bounce ideas off of people. And so that it was never going to work.
Just to explain the imagery I get, like you remember like those old like Looney Tunes cartoons where like it might be like Daffy Duck would have like a bomb in his mouth and it'd be like ticking and like you pull it out and like you're about to explode on the inside, or like Daffy Duck is just about to just implode rather.
Yeah.
That's what I picture when you say that, because I experience that all the time where like I have all these thoughts in me and I can't get them out.
Yeah.
And I have all this shit on my head and I just can't get it out, so it's like I'm about to explode.
Well, and as I've described to you before, in philosophy, the process of the dialectic is the sharing of ideas to judge them against each other, get somebody else's perspective, test the hypotheses, test the premises, see if there's something different. Maybe you missed something that you didn't realize. Like, you can't do that with yourself. You could try, but at a certain point, they're your own thoughts. You're just going to run the same thing over in your head. And so I think there's something very valuable about having that outlet in the person that you're with, is the ability to talk about all sorts of things. And I think with us in particular, because we process the world differently, we tend to share viewpoints on a lot of different things, but sometimes the way we interpret them or perceive them is different. And so then that adds a dimension to simply being intellectual or having, intellectual conversation is. So for you in an ideal relationship, how would you, like, what would your ideal communication style be? Because I think that there are different, depending on different types, you have people who will interact with each other in specific ways. Are there ways of communicating with your significant other that you find to be like more beneficial or less beneficial, or what is your preference for handling tough situations or arguments or sensitive subjects or things like that?
That word, I like the word. That was a buzzword right there. Sensitive subjects. I think a lot of times in communications, when people communicate with other people, like typically a person thinks in their mind, like, how can I say this to this person in a way that doesn't really offend them, doesn't really push a button. I'm speaking on a sensitive subject or a touchy issue. I'm the type of person to where no subject is sensitive. Nothing is touchy. So communication-wise, I prefer being blunt and honest and straightforward as possible. There's literally nothing, almost, there's very little things that can offend me. As you would know, the biggest thing that offends me is just being wrong about I
know that very well.
Just being wrong about something. But if you're
being wrong and then doubling down on being wrong.
Yeah, but if
you take it personally.
If you're just like communicating with me about something between us in our relationship, like I don't do this enough, or I do this too much, or you didn't like I did this, say it to me. There's it's not going to hurt my feelings. Right. It's really not. Just be as blunt as possible. Because honestly, I'm not the most aware of like things that are going to hurt someone's feelings, or things that might bother someone. So if you don't tell me, then I'm probably going to keep doing the same thing that annoys you. So just tell me. It's not going to bother me. It's not difficult for me to change my behavior also.
Yeah, that makes sense. See, and conversely, I would say that being somebody, I think we've always attributed to like being a feeler, is there will be things that will offend me depending on, but typically it's not what it is, it's like how somebody says things, or if they're like, I don't know, sometimes bluntness, depending on how it's delivered, can just be like insensitive for the subject. However, when it comes to sensitive subjects, generally speaking, I think it's way more productive, and in a way, safer is the word that's coming to mind. It's not the one that I want, but to talk about things that are sensitive upfront and honestly, rather than burying them.
So I'm not sure if you answered the question specifically to what you asked me about what types. So what types don't you think?
So disclaimer is that Nick has a much stronger grasp on other types than I do. That being the case, I'd have to say, I think, as I've described, I think S types generally just are not my cup of tea. My experience that I like talking to people in general, whether they're friends or whatever, who are N's, I just feel much more connected to generally. But I think that now my dad is an ENTJ. I think I could be compatible with ENTJs, but there is like this general
too much extroversion.
Well, there's that, but I think like NT-ness to a point can get a little insensitive for me sometimes. And I think my mom always would point this out to my dad, because it was me and my sister, and she won't take the freaking test, but we think she's an NF2 of some kind. And so like sometimes we would take things like very, we'd be sensitive about things that my dad would say, and my mom is an SF, and so he would just get confused as to like why this straightforward information was not being digested correctly. Okay. So I think that NTs meet. I mean, from my experience, probably with the exception of an INTP. I mean, I don't think I would ever call you insensitive. And maybe it's because you have your FE developed more than most. I just don't get that from you. Like, when we do have miscommunications, I don't think I would. There's never been a situation where I would chalk it up to insensitivity, because I don't think you're ever unaware of your communications, which I think is a key to being insensitive. So if you say something that could appear to somebody else to be insensitive, but your intention was to still say it, then for me, like, I trust what you're saying then, because I already know that you kind of thought through it. Mm-hmm. And that you would, like, I don't know, I guess that's a quality that I don't appreciate in people, is when they, like, just blurt stuff out and don't think about how the person would receive it.
Yeah.
So that's important to me. So without being able to list specific types, I would say S's don't work for me, and other NT types, per my experience so far, run the risk of not working. But like I said, my dad's an ENTJ. I think I could put up with an ENTJ probably. But yeah, the balancing of the extroversion too. Like, I need somebody who's going to want to not leave the house sometimes, because I'm like that too.
Different ways.
Yeah.
So this is our first video. We're discussing relationships. We hope that we may enlighten some of you guys in some type of ways. We hope that if you're a different type, you can understand our types, or if you share our types, that you can say, hey, I relate to that. And, if you are our types and you're saying, hey, I don't relate to that,
leave a comment. Let us know. And we can talk about it next
I'm an
video.
INTP, so I could give, I don't care. Yeah. But
I'll care what you have to say.
Open discussion, man. We just hope that you guys enjoy what we had to say.
Yeah, we'll be back. Bye.
Signing out. Young V. Pimp C, Bumby, I'm an underground king in this bitch. Need a ring out this bitch, like 6 of them. MJ with a fade and a gold chain.